Going on, MMA fans? I felt compelled to do a response video to Mike Mio Dread, and if you haven't checked this video out, this will be a response video to those videos. It's a 3-part series that he did. I'm not going to go crazy into depth about this, but I want to talk about some points that he hit on, because some of the stuff that he's talking about is definitely true, and we do see it prevalent in MMA right now. For one, the UFC myth that Mike talked about, the UFC has done a very good job of marketing ultimate, and let me just, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic here, but this is the terminology that we hear every day, to the casual fan base, is ultimate fighting. The UFC has done a good job of making sure that the casual fan base looks at it that way. They look at the UFC as ultimate fighting and not mixed martial arts. You see this with so many different articles, and that's how it's written. Is it's not corrected by the UFC saying, "Oh, we're a mixed martial arts promotion." You see that ultimate fighting is not corrected. The perfect example, the CNBC thing that's going on this evening. Ultimate fighting, not, transferred to mixed martial arts. And it's sad to see that, because casual fans, equate ultimate fighting to the UFC, and because of that, in some situations, those fans don't branch out and look at other mixed martial arts promotions. And this is something that, and I'll get to this topic last in this video, but casual fans, we were all that at one point. We all started out, we started watching a promotion. Most of us started out watching the UFC. We asked ourselves, or we watched other people's videos, or we watched, other things on the internet and said, there's got to be more out there. So we branched out and we checked into it. And then you get more and more into it. You get more diehard about the sport, and thus you get to where you are, later on down the road. As far as Dana White goes, Dana has done good things for this sport, and you cannot deny that. I mean, the fact that the UFC is the leading promotion, the fact that we get good fights, maybe not all the time, but we get a solid card. It doesn't get canceled, which is something that's just happened recently with Affliction, where the main event got canceled and there was nothing to fill it. The UFC has the ability to fill in those places, and that's something that I think sometimes, even as much as we get upset with Dana White and we don't agree with the fact that he spews, sometimes some of the worst possible things, the fact that the UFC puts on these cards, sometimes we take that for granted. I know that I do personally. When Dana White talks, out of line and uses verbiage that shouldn't be used, is it out of line? Is it out of control? In some situations, yes. Is this why mixed martial arts is not moving further up the totem pole because of this image? Most definitely. If Dana White portrayed himself in a better, professional manner, more and more better things, I think, would be written about this sport. And it is something that will, down the line and even now, is holding this sport back. So it's something that Dana will have to maybe figure out on his own, or maybe, Lorenzo Fertitta will finally step in and say, enough is enough. We're not going to get anywhere if this continues to go down like this. So Dana has pros and cons, and the pros is he helped build this sport from the ground up with the Fertittas. The cons are he, unfortunately, is holding the sport back in a way. Fedor, this blew out of proportion here in the last day and a half, from sources that I followed that said that it might be going down to, all kinds of situations. I really don't want to talk about this subject, more so than to say that I'm disappointed in the fact that this go-around, in my opinion, was M1's fault. The UFC is a business. They're not going to co-promote no matter what you tell them or what you give them or what kind of stipulation is given in their favor. They will not co-promote under any circumstances. It's just fact. They're a business. And to ask the UFC to give you half of that pay-per-view cut is not going to happen. And it doesn't matter who they go to in the United States, M1, no one is going to fly for that. Not even Scott Coker with Strikeforce. It's just, that's asinine. It's not going to happen. In the past, the UFC really has been somewhat to blame for, the actions of what they have said. But, today's situation, unfortunately, it's, tends to stem on the shoulders of Vadim, M1, and it appears to be a little bit on Fedor's shoulders, based upon, the words coming out of his mouth today saying that I will not fight unless M1 is allowed to co-promote with that organization. And this is something that he said himself. It wasn't, Vadim. It came out of his own mouth. So, but nonetheless, this situation with Fedor, he will never fight, at least in my opinion, in the UFC based upon the co-promoting. And I do not think he will fight in the U.S., in my opinion, ever again. The casual fans, and this is the last point that I wanted to hit on, and I talked about this just briefly, but, we were all casual fans at some point, and, we all looked to try to find, whether it be videos here on YouTube, when, Jeremy, the old MMA analyst, was on, to, however that you found going to other promotions and finding out about it. We all started off at that point, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of times where I come across articles, I come across forums where people that are just trying to learn about the sport are demoralized, and that's not fair, because every single one of us we're at that point. And just because someone wants to learn, we shouldn't restrict them from that, and I have a serious issue with that. Serious issue. Those that choose to not learn and not, try to understand the sport, there's nothing you can do about that. And if that's how, someone chooses to look at the sport, they're entitled to their opinion. You will not hear anything from me about that subject. But I have a serious problem with people demoralizing people that, they're not giving people chances, that we were all in that same boat at one point. So that's something that I think we all need to remember, because there are times where, sometimes we may get, I don't want to say short, or maybe, we don't understand why someone's asking this question, but you got to remember, we were at that point, at some point. We were once that casual fan before we got further into MMA. So, that's something that I just want to say, try to remember that. That's something that, I think some of us tend to forget sometimes, and, we're human. That's just how it is. But nonetheless, Mike did a great job with his videos. Make sure you check them out. I really felt compelled to do a response video just based upon what he talked about. And I just wanted to touch on it without going too crazy into depth. So these were my thoughts on it. Make sure you check out his videos. And on that note, you guys have a great day.